just do it for Miami Dolphins. The pressure, he's in trouble. Loses the football. Touchdown! Got it! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle. The Dolphins touchdown. Going deep upfield on the near side. Man open. Touchdown! Looking deep. He's got a man. Touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's got it over the touchdown.
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
You're listening to Fin Too Deep.
Tua back to throw. Blitz coming. They get to him. No, he takes off running. And he's in. Touchdown, Miami.
With the sixth pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jalen Waddle.
Giving you unfiltered, informed, and controversial takes on the Miami Dolphins and the NFL Draft. Here's Reason and Neal.
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason. We're back here for another episode as we dive Fin Too Deep, as always, with my co-host Neal Driscoll. Neal, how you? Every time I watch that intro, man, even if it's in the off season, like I'm ready to run through a wall. Like I wish the season was here right now. How you feeling today, Neal?
Well, you know, it sucks, man. We still got 5.5 months, man. It's such a long way away, and that's why, like, you know, it's been one of the most interesting free agents that I can remember when I'm looking at all these one-year deals, right? I'm seeing I think we're in the cusp of seeing a showdown between owners and the Players Association, spearheaded with the Lamar Jackson collusion talks and all this. But it does seem like the owners had their hands pretty tight on their wallets this year. When I saw yesterday that Bobby Wagner got a 1-year deal for $7 million, like I was going to go take every coin I had in my jars to Coinstar and see if I could help throw down to get that bonus
and
money.
every card you got.
Right, man. I was just thinking, like, how the hell is Bobby Wagner being had for a 1-year, $7 million?
We knew, Neal, because what were we hearing? I reported on my Patreon. The rumblings we had been hearing was what? He wanted to stay on the West Coast, right?
Yeah, and it was interesting, though, because even like when we signed the David Long contract, like I thought David Long was going to get paid double than what he got from us. Like, you know, being realistic, like I kind of had a chart, and I don't use Spot Rack or anything like that because they tend to be. They had Jawaan Taylor getting $6 million a year, and he got 20, right? And it's still a good resource. I'm not, you know, it's a hard thing to predict the dollars, but like, I mean, what an interesting off season. But you know,
Look at the right tackle market compared to the linebacker market. What you're talking about, we didn't think the right tackle market would go as high as it did. We also didn't think the linebacker market would go as low as it did, right?
Right. And the only linebacker that got the money I thought they were going to get was Tremaine Edmonds, to be honest.
Yeah,
young guy, premier player at the position. But anyone else, like Drew Tranquill for $3.5 million is one that stands out to me, which is like, for me personally, why the hell didn't we cut Keon Crossy to go get Drew Tranquill? But, you know, I digress. What you know, I think at the end of the day, for me, the story of the Dolphins offseason.
Jerome Baker.
Right. The story
of the money, you know, like
the Dolphins all season to me was when the big move they made was getting Vic Fangio, obviously, for me personally. I think between that and Jalen Ramsey, that was accomplishing a lot. But you know, I'm feeling good, man. Like, you know, I think the Dolphins are on a cusp to being a premier team in this league. You know, you got to be the man. You know, to be the man, you got to beat the man. So, you know, the Chiefs and Bengals, you know, in a power ranking format are probably ahead of us. But I don't see anybody else in the AFC East that I'd put over the Dolphins at this point right now, besides the Chiefs and Bengals. And honestly, I'm not afraid of either of them.
All right, so then that's a perfect segue into something we should talk about here. It's on the thumbnail. Neal, is Tua Tagovailoa leading the best Miami Dolphins roster we've seen since the Marino era? Because last year, I compared it to was it the 2002 or the 2004 roster? One of those two rosters was unbelievably stacked I think it was a 2000. It was either 2002 or 2004 roster. I compared it last year.
I think it was 2002 when we got Ricky. We first got Ricky.
Yeah. That's what I think. I'm pretty sure it was. And so I compared them, and I'm like, okay, we were pretty stacked. Now I'm looking at this, and I'm like, this is better than any of those teams we had it with Ricky. This is better. This defense. I'm gonna say it. This defense on paper looks to be more complete than any defense we had Zach or JT a part of. Like, this defense from front to back, it's pretty freaking complete, man. You know what I mean? And we haven't even hit the draft yet. We haven't even freed up the extra money we'll talk about later, and that's coming to us in June 1st anyways. You know what I mean? Like, there's still vets that could be added. I mean, look at when we added Melvin Ingram last year. Now, I don't think we're going to add Melvin Ingram again because, Malik Reed, et cetera. But I just, you look at veterans could come in here on the cheap that are just dwindling around or that get cut or released, right? And this could be a spot that looks like we can go win a championship, right? So do you're just like me. I've questioned a lot of people in this community whether they've actually watched this team since Marino based on how they've reacted to Tua. All right. I know me and you have, I know for sure. So in your opinion, is this the best team on paper you've seen that Tua Tagovailoa is now leading since the Marino era, Neal?
Yeah, I could. And the answer to that question, the first thing I'll say is that to say yes to that question, you have to have a belief in Tua Tagovailoa, which I do. I did an exercise over the last 2 weeks where I've watched every offensive play all over again, kind of, cleared my mind of any, preconceived notions that I had. And I put out a tweet and it had 40,000 impressions in like a few hours, which was, in rewatching every offensive snap from last year, the story the media tried to make was that Tua Tagovailoa is this concussion injury-prone quarterback. My takeaway is that he cemented himself as a top 10 quarterback and played MVP football for 75% of the season. And I think in year 2 of this, we actually will see a better Tua Tagovailoa. I think Tua is going to finish next year. And I don't look, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you that what's going to happen for Tua or any player in terms of injuries and stuff like that. But I don't want to focus on those things because just because the guy's had 2 concussions doesn't mean that that's like the topic that we have to hammer home all the time. None of us know, I listen to doctors for that stuff, but I think Tua's going to have a better season than he did last season this season. I think he's going to have a better feel for the offense in year 2. I think he's going to be more decisive. I think the chemistry is going to only get better with the receiving cores. And frankly, I actually think that Cedrick Wilson is going to be a really good number 3 receiver in this offense this year, which I think is going to be a step up. So to answer your question, yeah, I think this is the most complete Dolphins team, even including Dan Marino teams. And, because I'll tell you, as good as Dan Marino was, we never had any semblance of a running game. Not saying we have the Baltimore.
Only Kareem Abdul-Jabbar that one year where he ran for 1,000.
Yeah, and I think that with Marino, you could bring in any wide receiver that you wanted to, and you're going to have productive Dan Marino. He's one of the greatest of all time. But unfortunately, I don't think Miami's front office did a good job of building around him. They kind of pushed Don Shula to the side for Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah.
We never really developed the running game. As great as Dan Marino was, I don't think he ever had that bona fide game-breaking receiver. I mean, he had good receivers, Irvin Fryers, O.J. McDuffie's, but he never had a Tyreek Hill. That is for sure. And what I think of what the Dolphins did is that they knew their offense to make that, that gigantic leap, and they wanted to make sure that the defense followed suit this year. And, so I think this Dolphin team, and this isn't clickbait for me. I think they're a top 5 team in football right now. And I think that it's time to start really thinking that this team has a shot in the next year or 2 to make that run, that run like we've seen the Bengals make. And honestly, as good as Joe Burrow is and that passing game, their defense can't touch what our defense is.
I know it's
and that's what and that's what gets me excited is, and then on top of that, this coaching staff we have assembled. And I think one of the exercises I want to do over the next couple of weeks is really break down the Dolphins coaching staff against the NFL, because it went from probably being number 32 2 years ago to being on the cusp of being a top 10 overall.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
And you take those leaps. And the last thing I'll say about this is the Dolphins, if they wanted right now, could have Tom Brady as their starting quarterback. They could have Lamar Jackson as their starting quarterback, and more than likely they could have had Aaron Rodgers as their starting quarterback, and Mike McDaniel stuck with Tua Tagovailoa, and that's all I need to know. When you have 3 elite talents like that coming out, and kind of, some of them aren't making it secrets they want to be in Miami. The Dolphins, it shows me that Mike McDaniel has control of this team, not Stephen Ross, and it shows me they truly believe in Tua Tagovailoa. And that matches what I see when I watch tape.
Okay, first thing on the Marino thing. I think the only thing Marino really had over what we had right now is Marino had more of a complete offensive line. Now,
of course,
that's not to say we don't have pieces, clearly, like Armstead, Connor Williams, and Robert Hunt. We still have, 3 out of 5, which is better than, 1 out of 5, but he just had a more complete offensive line. That's the only thing I'd give him. And now, with what you said about Cedrick Wilson, I'm staking my flag. Braxton Berrios is going to be more productive this year than Cedrick. It's over, buddy. Tua is going. Listen, you remember last offseason how badly I wanted Braxton Berrios, and then he re-signed with the Jets. I'm like, because that was our chance at a return. I think he's a dynamic returner. But I think Tua is going to that's Tua's type of receiver out of the slot. Braxton Berrios is Tua's type of receiver out of the slot. And I think Berrios' homecoming, bro, hopefully it's in Miami, but he's going to earn a paycheck this year with Tua Tagovailoa, just like Sherfield did, but to another level. Cedrick Wilson, move him now, because Berrios and potentially Ezekama in the red zone could drive Cedrick Wilson's. I mean, we can go from a bag of footballs to you'll be lucky if you get a Lunchables for the guy. That's what these guys might do to him, right? He's just going to get buried further and further, I think. So, and they brought back River Craycraft. So you saw River Craycraft was more productive when he was healthy at times than freaking Cedrick Wilson last year. So,
right, no, I've been very critical of Cedrick Wilson, and I'm with you. I think Braxton Berrios, to be honest, like, when I look at our offseason, obviously the move Jalen Ramsey came out of nowhere. Not really came out of nowhere, but when you see it actually come to fruition, that's a home run move. Jalen Ross, if I power rank the Dolphins players, Tyreek Hill's 1, Jalen Ramsey's number 2, and everyone else follows. So adding a player of that caliber is huge. David Long, I had ranked, and everyone said I was crazy. I had him ranked above Tremaine Edmonds. And, one of the things I like to do.
You weren't a fan of Tremaine Edmonds going into free agency, if people remember.
I like to post
especially all the money.
Well, I like to post my rankings and stuff like that because I don't want everyone to come off thinking like, oh my God, Neal's this unbelievable homer that every move the Dolphins make. But I had David Long as the 13th overall ranked free agent. And when we signed him, I was like shocked because I didn't even think that was in consideration because I thought he was going to get $12 million.
Yeah.
Braxton Berrios, though, is my second favorite signing because I think Berrios is going to be a special teams deeming. I think he's going to tear it up in the slot. And I think he's going to be an unbelievable security blanket for Tua. And then my favorite signing was actually Deshaun Elliott because I watched him here a lot in Baltimore, and I think he's a better player than Brandon Jones. He's a playmaker. I've never seen anybody stop Derrick Henry in his tracks like with that physicality. They call him the Joker, man. I'm telling you, dude, like we want to get on signing that guy to an extension now because he is a beast. What they did was great, and the Braxton Berrios move to me was huge. I think if they could trade Cedrick Wilson, they would have already done it. Yeah. I think they've tried. And look, it's not a horrible contract, but no receivers are getting paid right now, right? You can't even give away DeAndre Hopkins right now. Like that's what I'm saying. It's a weird feel to this offseason right now where some of these maneuvers, like what the Cowboys got Brandon Cooks for, what was it, a 5th round pick? That makes me think that like us finding a suitor for Cedrick Wilson is going to be tough, which look, it could be a good problem to have. I mean, he's going to be overpaid, but when you have a receiving core that has Tyreek, Waddle, Berrios, Cedrick Wilson, Eric Uzakama, River Craycraft, I mean, that's 6 guys that can play football, and 2 of them are 2 of the top 5-6 receivers in football. So
yeah,
this receiving core is insane, but the one ingredient we did not have was a Braxton Berrios because he's a chain mover. He's a reliable player. I mean, man, like I hated playing against that dude. Yeah, I think that was just, it's the easy cliche, and this guy's coaching him, but he could be a poor man's Wes Welker, and I mean that as a compliment. So I think that's a home run move. Home run.
People haven't had a chance to hear your thoughts on AVG coming back, and I want to give you some food for thought before I give you the floor. I've been trying to tell people I think the move might be give him some interior linebacker reps because he's got that rangy side-to-side speed that Fangio loves in his defense, and just don't pigeonhole him to a rotational edge guy. He's got the athleticism where he can drop in coverage. He's got way more instincts than Jerome Baker and Landon Roberts ever had, and I think that's worth dabbling with because of what Fangio. He's got a lot of the skill set that Fangio likes for interior guys. So, your overall thoughts on the AVG re-signing and maybe tinkering with him on the inside a little bit? I'm not saying move him full time, but I'm saying, because Fangio loves to disguise and shift, cross train him so you can use him just not as a rotational guy, but hey, you could have him shift into the interior or from the interior to the rotation, and they believe it, right? They believe it. He's a threat. So what do you think?
Did his money ever come out? Reason what he got paid?
Did it? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think it did. But, put it aside, I don't think he's going to be breaking the bank. And I agree with what you just said completely. I think what I heard was Vic Fangio personally called Andrew Van Ginkel and is like, I know you have other offers, but stay here. And I think Vic Fangio views him as a chess piece on that defense. And I love having Andrew Van Ginkel back. You know why? That dude every year makes a game-changing football play. Like when we beat the Rams in Tua's first start was in 2020, and he scooped that touchdown and ran it all the way down after that fumble for a touchdown. That changed the whole course of our season. You know what I mean? We started to get on this hot winning streak. Everything was good. I think definitely he has the versatility to play inside and out, and I think that's what you're going to see. I think the linebacker core, whether we like it or not, heading into the draft is almost complete. I think it's going to be Baker. I think it's going to be David Long. I think it's going to be Duke Riley. Who am I missing? I think Andrew Van Ginkel is going to be a component of that. Channing Tindall. And someone just asked in the chat, look, I had Channing Tindall probably highest ranked player of anyone I know last year in the draft. I think he's got to get it figured out between the ears. It's not physically the play. And he's going to have one of the best defensive minds in football to seriously help him. But yeah, I like Andrew Van Ginkel back, especially because I'm guessing it's a pretty team-friendly contract, and he's a glue guy. He's a guy who does his job really well. He's like having Durham Smythe on the offensive side of the ball. He's just going to do his job. Sometimes he's going to make plays that say, "Wow, that's a good football player." I don't think we're going to see Lawrence Taylor or Michael Parsons reincarnated with him, but I think it was a really good move, savvy move to get a guy that you want back. And I think it already shows you the powers that Vic Fangio has. Like when Vic Fangio picks up the phone, these young defenders are going to listen because you know what Andrew Van Ginkel's saying? I was going to get offered 1-year deals. So I'm going to be back in the same position next year. The salary cap's going to go up $25-30 million. Like, let me go and have a huge season under Vic Fangio, and then I can really cash in next season. So savvy, smart move. The Dolphins' edge rotation is absolutely loaded. I do think between him and Malik Reed, I mean, it definitely spells the end for Melvin Ingram in Miami, barring anything crazy. I know they had that money coming in June. Having a 5-man rotation when you have a Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips seems like overkill.
You can shift Ogba out there too, right?
Yeah, they have Ogba back. So I think that, it's a smart move. I think they made a lot of smart moves, Reason, honestly, in free agency. I think almost every signing, Eric Saubert, tight end, cheap deal, good player. Dan Feeney got paid a little bit more than I anticipated. I'm not going to lie there. I did not expect $3.25 million for Dan Feeney.
Come on, bro. They had to pay him. He's Eichenberg's competition.
Right.
Tell me, you ever seen that? Come on, man. I talked to David Feronis about this. Have you, let's talk about this. Is this the Achilles heel is clearly the offensive line, but, you're bringing it, you're selling me competition on guys who I know they're backups at best. You're not giving me even cusp guys. And what I mean by that is guys who are on the cusp of being a starter. Like Feeney is at best a backup. He is a locker room leader type of guy first, and then he's a backup. He's not a guy you want to depend on for 17 games and a couple of playoff games a year. That's just not who you want to rely on.
He's a sponsor. So there's two things the Dolphins did this offseason that I don't like. I gave them all their flowers, and I think they did a good job. The running back situation, I don't hate it. I don't love it. Bringing back Mostert, who had 900 yards and missed some games. He probably would have had a 1,000-yard season. Jeff Wilson's a tough guy, catches the ball well. Myles Gaskin coming back, I didn't see that coming.
You only needed one of him. You did not need both of Ahmed and Gaskin. They're the same player, except Gaskin has better vision. Ahmed has better burst. But other than that, they're the same freaking player. You only should have brought back one of them, Neal.
And it should have been Salvin Ahmed. I think they got it right with the first signing, to be honest. And who knows? Like, I didn't even see Myles Gaskin's contract, but he could be one of those guys that's a camp body. I hope that they're not done here, Reason. Because I will say this, and I pound the table to say this. There is no quarterback in football that would benefit from a upper echelon running game more than Tua Tagovailoa. He is a cerebral assaultant when he has a running game and people actually respect the run. That's why I was like, look, they did their due diligence. The Vikings were going to move Dalvin Cook. We'll see what happens. There's rumors they might cut him. The Derrick Henry stuff just to me was never going to happen, man. He's a good football player. He's got a lot of wear and tear, $16 million.
But Dalvin fits our scheme better. That's more of a north-south gap runner, whereas Dalvin gets to the edge. He's more of a zone fit for what we wanted. Dalvin's a better zone fit than Derrick Henry. I know everyone. Well, let me just call it what it is. We got a bunch of fans that are name whores. They're superstar whores. They just want the names, right? Instead of looking. Listen, would I cry if we got Derrick Henry? No, because it would make it work. But if you're going by fits, I'll say Eckler and Cook are better fits for what we want to do offensively than Derrick Henry. And like you said, Derrick Henry's got so much tread taken off those tires that, man, I don't know, you know?
Yeah, and he's going to cost more than a Dalvin Cook in terms of what you have to give up to get him. Look, sign me up for Dalvin Cook. I still think that's something that could happen.
I do too. They're going to monitor until the trade deadline.
And the good news here is that they didn't lock themselves into the position long-term with anything. I think it's adequate to above average what they did there, but I was personally just a little disappointed because I wanted some fresh blood. Yeah. And I do love this draft class, and I hope that they don't ignore this because I will be pretty frustrated if it's in round 3 and there's a Devin A. chain on the board, or if they're, Zach Charbonnet. If one of those guys are on the board and we pass, because I want this team to value the running back position because I think it's paramount to where they want to go. And the other thing that I didn't like, and we started to talk about it, was the offensive line, because I'm with you. We have 3 starters. And as good as Terron Armstead is, because he's the elite guy on that line, you need a good enough offensive tackle on the right side that can be a swing guy to go on the left when Armstead goes down. I will say this, and if I'm wrong, so be it. There is a strong chance Terron Armstead's going to miss 2 or 3 games this year. It's just going to happen. And I like Kendall Lamb, but he played 32 snaps, and he got hurt. That's not enough. Like, that to me is a camp body. Dan Feeney is a good quality backup center guard. He ain't a starter. I'm rare probably to say this, but I have more faith in Austin Jackson than I do Liam Eichenberg. And for me, I have faith in neither of them, if I had to be honest with you. So, like, when I started talking the draft with you months ago, I didn't even have offensive line in the formula for us in the second round. Now I think it's the leading thing that we go after. And at least it's a great offensive line class, because it's not a great draft class.
Yeah,
but it is a good offensive line class.
Brother, every week for my Patreons, I do an episode called 3 Takes. Usually it's on Thursdays, 3 Takes Thursdays, but sometimes I'll drop it on Friday and Saturday. I dropped one for the Patreons last night. My third take was the Dolphins may surprise us in that second round with a offensive line pick if someone drops there.
Right.
Knight says, my thought was they wanted Ahmed for depth and Gaskin just in case they couldn't get Cook or top end starter ready running back in the draft. Insurance.
Probably.
And everyone's saying, hey, if Jamar Gibbs is there, you take him.
I mean, I run to the podium. Jamar Gibbs is my 8th overall player ranked in this entire draft. Bro. And I know that it's hard to see, running backs fall. Like Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs are both way too good. Now, if Jahmyr Gibbs is there, you throw the plan out the window and you get him. You run to the podium, and then you know what? Chris Greer's probably facing a year or 2 for robbery and probably going to be in a penitentiary somewhere, because that's just theft at that point. The reality is that I'd be shocked if Jahmyr Gibbs is there at 51.
He's going in the first.
I think the Cowboys are a spot for him, Reason, with them only franchising Tony Pollard. Yep. And I think Bijan is a guy that New England could love at 14. The Chargers, with what's going on with Austin Eckler.
Are they out on Isaiah Spiller already?
I don't think they're out on him, man, but
I'll trade them. I'll trade them a bag of pucks for a bag.
I can see the Lions, even though they signed David Montgomery, like Bijan's special, man. And I would not, if I had the 4th pick in this year's draft, I'd take Bijan Robinson because I think this draft class sucks. I'm just being honest. But I love Bijan Robinson. So
yeah, he's amazing.
It is, but I don't think he'll be there. I'd love to get him. I just don't see it. And I see people that will be like, well, let's go get Darnell Wright. Darnell Wright's going to go in the top 20. I say people go get
Darnell Washington's going to be gone.
Yeah. I mean, these guys are really moving up the draft board because offensive linemen, look at the money that McGlinchey got. Look at the money that Orlando.
See, this is the team that I keep hearing with Bijan. Is Philly.
Well, he was there. He was there last week. I mean, and that would be
Miles walk, right? Miles Sanders left, right?
And God, could you imagine him in the backfield with Hurts, Devontae Smith, and AJ?
That offense, never mind, but that offensive line,
right?
Because speaking of the offensive line, right? Look at what the Chargers and the money they've spent on Herbert after they saw the first year of him with a bad offensive line. Look at what the Bengals are doing again. They went low last year and they said, let's go get Lyle Collins. They said, oh, well, it's not working. Let's go get Orlando Brown.
Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying here? Look at Hurts, right? And it's not just for Hurts. Look at what the Eagles have done for Hurts, Wentz, all the way back to McNabb. Those guys have been building offensive lines for 20 years in Philadelphia. Right. All these other teams with these young quarterbacks get it, but we're sitting here you know what? We're going to try and make these guys that the most Eichenberg has shown is he looked like he was turning a corner before he got hurt. Looked, all right? That's a big...
I thought that was a stretch, too, because I don't think
you know what I mean? And I know they're convinced in that building he was turning a corner. I know for a fact.
Yeah,
so you see this, and you're like, you guys are just sitting out, and you're taking every other major position on this team, other than running back, which no GM really does. But you're taking all these other positions and you're treating them like we're in win now mode, except the offensive line, when an adage that's from the day football started, that'll be here till the day football ends. I don't care if you're new school, old school, whatever. Games are won and lost in the freaking trenches. And I don't know what. I just do not get, I must sound like a broken record because I say that I talk to Richmond all the time about this and we just scratch our head because we're like, you got a guy at the left guard, you got a guy right guard. You can't shift protections and mask that. You just can't. And I just do not understand. And I keep coming back to McDaniel. And McDaniel, one of the first moves he made was bringing Chase Edmonds. And as soon as he saw it wasn't working with Chase Edmonds, he said, get his ass out of here.
Right.
And it just continues to look like Chris Greer has his thumbprints on this. I don't care. And I'll say it every time this comes up. I don't care because I just do not. And I said this on my three takes episode. And we're going to get into some prospects here in a bit. We need Frank Smith and Mike McDaniel to draft a tackle with that 2nd or 3rd round pick. You know why? They need to show Chris Greer in that scouting department this is how it's done. They need to draft the right guy, and they need to develop him, and they need to build that cachet and say, leave the offensive line stuff up to us. Follow our lead. Because you know what? If you do Chris Greer, you're going to go from a guy who looks like he couldn't hit on offensive line if it was the broad side of a barn to they might turn you into an offensive line GM guru. So you better, this is one thing where I said, Mike McDaniel, Frank Smith, Chris Greer, you better put your ego to the side and you better ride their coattails because they might make you look like a genius when it comes to drafting offensive linemen because we've seen their track record, Frank Smith and Mike McDaniel. I mean, Trent Williams was the best lineman in football the 1 year Mike McDaniel was the OC, and that's because he had Trent Williams motioning and doing all these different crazy things that were blowing people's minds. And on top of that, even when he was doing the fundamental stuff, Trent Williams was lights out. Right. So, they know what that's one thing I say, they know what they're doing, and that's why I don't believe they are fully convinced. I believe that's a Chris Greer type of stubbornness. I will die on that because we already saw it. He did it with Boyer and Crossman. What makes people think he won't do it with his draft picks? Let's stop being naive and lying to ourselves. You know what I mean?
Well, and I also think it's a problem that's not going to go away because I'm not convinced that they're bringing back Connor Williams. I think it's between him and Robert Hunt, and I think they're going to go with Robert Hunt, and I think they're going to move on from Connor Williams.
Because of the money he's going to ask for?
Yeah, I think his money is going to go up a little bit.
A little bit. He's going to tell teams, I can give you top 10 center play, or I can give you top 10 left guard play. I mentioned this, Neal. When is the last time you ever saw a free agent that said that I can give you top 10 center or top 10 guard play? Now, we've seen guys say I can play both, but when did someone say I can give you top 10 in either?
Well, and that's what I'm saying. I think they need 3 offensive linemen, and hear me out. As good as Terran Armstead is, he misses games. You need a backup plan, right? You can't have your left tackle out. I think they're going to keep Robert Hunt, and he's going to get a long-term extension at right guard. But then other than that, I think you're going to have a hole at center, a hole at left guard, and a hole at right tackle. And I think that's why I think it's important for them to sign one free agent that's on the younger side that could become a starter. Like a name that comes to my mind that could be cut, even though he didn't play well last year, is La'el Collins. I'll still think that for some reason, I don't know why I do this to myself. He's tried to, he's flirted with coming to Miami twice before, and it's never panned out. He looked like a disaster for the first quarter of the season in Cincinnati. He played better during the season, then he got hurt. I don't know why reason. I might be crazy. I still have faith in him for some reason to think that we could bring him in on the cheap and be a quality right tackle.
Yeah.
At least better, then upgrade to Austin Jackson. But you better damn sure go find someone in the second round. You better, and we're going to name the names, and I got 3 guys that I freaking love in the second round. But you got to go get those guys, because then next year, I think that's going to be one of our highest priority positions in the draft again. Maybe not in the first round, but I think in the second round again, we're going to be looking for another starting quality offensive lineman. And, there's guys like Matt Fielder that are out there for free agency, Filer. There's other guys. Maybe that they're waiting till that money opens up, because here's what I don't get, Reason, and we're going to talk about moves they can make, but they can make some releases. They've tried to make some trades, but they can easily extend Christian Wilkins now. I don't know why I have a weird feeling about this, but maybe that was lip service. Maybe Christian Wilkins isn't part of their long-term plans. I don't know that either way. They said he was. I'd have to imagine based off the tape that he had last year, where he was a top 5 defensive tackle in the league, he has to be in their plans. But we also saw Javon Hargrave get $20 million a year this off season. So that's where I have a little pause. Why haven't they got a contract done with a guy that frees up cap space, gives them more flexibility? Why haven't they got it done yet? Why do I have a weird feeling that that's not a slam dunk as I want that to be?
Yeah, it's something I've brought up because I think, listen, I think we're talking about in the range of, 4-year, $90 million Daron Payne money right now. And listen, I love Christian Wilkins. You love Christian Wilkins. We all love Christian Wilkins. But people need to realize they're going to pause when it comes to paying him $22.5 million, because as much as we all love Christian Wilkins, he's not rounded out yet as a pass rusher. And, we're getting into Aaron Donald type. Listen, I don't even think Daron Payne's worth $22.5 million. You want my honest opinion? The only guy should be making anywhere over $20 million is Aaron Donald.
Right.
I look at, they should have locked up Christian Wilkins last year because they could have got him at about 13, 14 million.
Agreed.
I think, listen, if they paid him 16, 17, 18 million dollars a year, I'm all for that with Christian Wilkins. Let's lock him down. But when we start getting into 22.5 million, we're talking about only $7.5 million difference between him and Tyreek Hill. And let's be honest, who's more valuable to the plans here? You got to remember, when you're getting into 22.5 million, you're talking about best backup quarterback, potential starter money. That's where we're starting to get into that realm. So people have got to, you got to take your feelings out of it. You got to not be subjective, and you got to think about it from the business side. And I think if you look at it objectively, any team, not just the Dolphins, is going to pause at paying him $22.5 million, especially with what? With now Fangio coming in, our scheme is prevalent on paying edge rushers and second level guys. Interior defensive guys are more of a luxury, right? That's why everyone was so shocked that they paid Hargrave over in San Fran, because they were running a form of Fangio's defense. That's why they're so paid. But you see, while they're running that form, how many interior guys had come through and they'd moved off of DeForest Buckner, et cetera, right? Because they don't pay them in this system. They focus on edge rushers, second level, and secondary players. That's where the money gets spent. So I think there's going to be legitimate pause at $22.5 million. And I love Christian Wilkins, and I hope they work it out. But if he comes in here asking for 4 years and $90 million, I don't think it's as locked, signed, sealed, and delivered as some people want to make it out to be. I don't see them.
You know what I think? I think he's a guy that's going to play under this 5th-year tender. And if he plays the level he does last year, they're probably going to look to re-sign him. Worst case scenario, franchise tag him. I think the cap hits 18.9 for defensive tackles.
That's fair. That's fair for what he
so
$22 million.
Look, there's two sides, like you just said. Like with my heart, Christian Wilkins is one of my probably 5 to 7 favorite players in football.
I want him to be a lifelong Dolphin, bro.
I want him to be a Dolphin for 5 more years. The business side of him says to me, "Wow, man, we went out and got Tyreek Hill. We went out there and we got Tyreek Hill. We got Jalen Ramsey. We've gotten all these guys. We got contracts coming in the next couple of years to Jalen Phillips and Jalen Waddle. Like, you don't have to. There's no prize given for getting contracts done before you have to. So sometimes it's smart business to utilize the franchise tag, to use transition tags, to utilize this 5th-year option because it gives you control. So the Dolphins really have the ability to literally have Christian Wilkins on lockdown for 2 more years after this year with franchise tags. And maybe that's the route they go. I just think I have a weird feeling in my gut. Like I have a weird feeling that there could be a curveball there. It wouldn't surprise me. Anything doesn't surprise me in football anymore, man. Like things just happen, you know what I mean? But it will be interesting to see. But the offensive line, we need the resources. It's going to happen, and it's going to happen early in the draft. That's what I truly believe.
Watchmaster says we need 3 to 4 quality offensive linemen if we still want to win the division. Tua still doesn't have the protection he needs. 300 Ego says, reason you're hitting right on the money. These coaches know the O-line men they want and will get them in the draft. I also believe the linebacker position is about done also. Yeah, hey, man, I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of interest. Let's get into some of the prospects here because
I love it.
Neil hit me up and said,
draft season.
Yeah, let's talk about 5 prospects. He said, let's talk about 5 prospects. And I said to him before I went live here, I said, brother, I sat there and I couldn't narrow it down to 5. So I'll just name my guys and then I'll give you the floor to name your guys. And then we'll talk about the guys after that. Okay. Yep. So if they're targeting tight end at 51, Laporta
class in probably 15 years.
Yeah, man. Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, Tucker Kraft. Now, you think Kincaid's probably going to be gone. I don't know if I see 3 tight ends by 51 being off the board, but we've seen crazier things. I mean, if one of those tight ends are there, man, Sam Laporta or Kincaid. Oh, but then interior offensive line. We were talking about Connor Williams, John Michael Schmitz.
We're going to have a lot of overlap here. We think a lot alike. Trust me.
It's a very, very reasonable. I think John Michael Schmitz is going to be on the board at 51. I think that's a very, very real possibility. A guy I know you like out of TCU, interior offensive lineman, guard center, Steve Avila. You got Joe Tippmann who can play center. You got a guy who they've sat down and visited, an interior offensive lineman, a guard, Braden Daniels. Right, that's another guy.
And he's a beast. He can play inside and out, and he's a big dude.
He is a big dude.
He's a big dude.
A guy I know you loved preseason. If they want to go tackle, Jalen Duncan from your Maryland team. A guy we've heard they're quietly very interested in, Blake Freeland.
Right.
I think Matt Bergeron is a very real possibility because I've heard they actually really like. That's another name I've heard rumblings around. A guy who I heard everyone was talking about fluker. I heard the eyes were on Tyler Steen at Alabama because he can play all over the offensive line, right? Now Devin A-Chain, Zach Charbonnet, if they want to go running back, that makes sense. Jack Campbell, I don't know if he'll be there, but if they're going linebacker, what if Drew Sanders falls? What if Diane Henley falls and he's there? That's another guy. I keep seeing Emmanuel Forbes, another guy I know they interviewed and could be around that range out of Miami, Tyreek Stevenson. And then what if they want to add to the safety class because we don't have a ton of depth there with a guy like Sidney Brown? I think Darnell Washington, Michael Meyer, Jamar Gibbs, Keely Ringo, Cam Smith, I think those guys will be gone. But listen, that's why I couldn't narrow it down to 5 because all those guys make sense and they all might be there. So a lot of those names might be there or in and around that area. Neal, your thoughts on those names and any names I might have missed?
Yeah, so my 6 names that I wrote down, and you covered every one of them, but it was Matthew Bergeron, it was Blake Freeland, John Michael Schmitz, Steve Avila, Sam Laporta, and Jack Campbell. Those are the 6 names that I were like, these are the 6 guys that I'm honing in on. Jalen Duncan from Ellen is a guy I like a lot. I think he's actually going to fall into the 3rd round, which, God, if you could get him in the 3rd round, would be a steal. But I saw someone in here ask about Blake Freeland. Blake Freeland is an elite level athlete. I think he had a 37-inch vertical jump. You look at his size; he has all the size. You know, he's a dude you want coming off the bus first, and he reminds me of a guy from Pitt called Brian O'Neill who plays on the Vikings, who's probably a top 5 right tackle in football. So he's got some development. He held his own and did a really good job at the Senior Bowl. He's a guy I can see them liking a lot. Matthew Bergeron, Syracuse, has a lot of versatility. Can play inside and out. He's a guy that could play on the right side, and if Armstead went down, flip over to the left side. I'm starting to think that he might go before 51 because I've heard his name's pretty hot in league sources. I think Steve Avila is a guy that we should circle and star because he's like an ass-kicking mauler like Robert Hunt that you plug in at left guard who has some ability to play center. But if you have guards that are Steve Avila and Robert Hunt, like that is a strength. And that's John Michael Schmitz. Last year I had really high grades on Tyler Linderbaum. I don't have John Michael Schmitz far off of Linderbaum. I think that he is a technician. He's strong. He has a great anchor. He's mean. He finishes blocks. He's a dude that and look, I'm the first to tell you, drafting offensive lineman isn't sexy, but this is what this team does. We got enough sexy. We got Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Tua. We have Jalen Ramsey. We have X. We have enough sexy. We need meat and potatoes. That's why we're naming these guys. Jack Campbell, to me, despite all the moves we made, is just an absolute soldier at linebacker. And I don't think that linebacker is going to be a high priority after what we've seen. But I will say that we didn't pay any of our linebackers on really long-term deals. So Jack Campbell's there. I mean, that's a guy that you have to pay attention to. And then you said Sam Laporta. So I do think 3 tight ends go. And I told you this yesterday. I've heard from people that I trust that work with some scouts that told me that Luke Musgrave is a hell of an athlete. He's a good player, but he's also the P word. And when I heard
P-U-S-S-Y, I'll spell it out for y'all. Go ahead.
And I'm not going to bury people on their way out, but I think we just had one of those at tight end. So I think that we need a physical guy that can put his hand in the dirt and block, who can make the tough catch on 3rd downs. And for me, Sam Laporta is the guy. And when Pat Freiermuth was coming out of the draft, I had Pat Freiermuth as a top 20 prospect. And people were like, dude, you're crazy. That guy only called for X amount of yards, X amount of touchdowns. Yeah, but his quarterback was Sean Clifford. And, I might be as good as Sean Clifford. So at the end of the day, I think Sam Laporta is halted by the offensive scheme that he's in. He is going to be a better pro than he is collegiate player. If he's there, he has to be your pick. He has to be your pick because I think he's such a good pass catcher.
I get Kittle vibes, if you want my honest opinion. Like my thing with Laporta too is, listen, my tight end, I'm going to be dropping my tight end big board this week, right? And Laporta, to me, I watched that film and, it was between him and Kincaid for my tight end 3 spot. And I'm going to tell you this much, it would have been between him and Darnell Washington for tight end 1 if he would have had a better offense and quarterback, I think. Yeah. He would have put more production on tape for me, and I would have, probably bolstered him. I just see Laporta. I mean, when you posted your tweet yesterday late at night, and I saw it even later at night, he's such a stud, bro. Like, he does so many things you want, and you look at him, and he's the type of guy you think Mike McDaniel will fall head over heels for watching his film, considering the tight ends McDaniel's worked with in the past, and Embry. And I just look at Laporta as I look at him as arguably, other than Darnell Washington, he might be the perfect fit for us at tight end. And, it's one thing to go best player available, but when you got a guy who drops that's a perfect fit, that's a totally different ballgame, because that tells you that guy could start from day one.
And that's a great point, because here's the thing is, my NFL draft rankings are overall draft rankings. Who might be a better fit for the Miami Dolphins can be night and day for those rankings, right? Like, I might say X player is a better player. Like, I might have Trent Simpson personally as my linebacker one. I have him as the highest rated linebacker in this draft. With that said, if I had to do a draft board for the Dolphins, I'd have Jack Campbell above Trenton Simpson, because he's a better scheme fit for what we do. So, like, when I when you say things like that, I think it's a really, really good point, because this is a special tight end class. If I could have any of them, and he's not my highest rated player at the position, because I have Mike Mayer as my number one tight end. If I could have any tight end to come to this offense, it'd be Darnell Washington. And I saw someone post that down there. Guys, he is not going to be there at 51. I am telling you, it wouldn't surprise me if he went 15 to the Packers. He's not going to be there at 51. He is such a damn good.
He doesn't make it out of the 20s. He does not make it out of the 20s.
You don't find guys of that size. You haven't seen a guy come out like that in 20 years at that position.
And he's arguably, dude, you see that athleticism, that freakish ability, but also all the fundamentals he does so well. The guy's arguably one of the best blockers we've seen at that position in how long? The guy's an absolute mauler. He does everything anyone's going to look for at that position with a crazy high ceiling. Him and Laporta, to me, have, him, Laporta, and what's his face, and Kuntz have the highest ceilings for me out of the tight end class. Kuntz is like, and this is another thing. It's even Zach Kuntz is Gesicki, he's soft. No, he's not. Watch him. That guy is a very, very willing blocker. His issue is his hand placement and his technique when he starts blocking. That's what Zach Kuntz's issue is. It's all technique, which can be coached up. He shows he's much more willing, and he's stronger. He had 23 bench reps. He's stronger than Gesicki. So I'm not worried about Zach Kuntz. Zach Kuntz, he's my tight end 7 for a reason, because he still has a lot of development left. But you look at ceilings, man, Darnell Washington, Sam Laporta, and Kuntz probably have the highest ceilings for me. But Darnell Washington has that high of a ceiling, has all that freakish athletic ability, and he is an absolute monster in line. Like, he is, you do not want to go up against that 6'6" behemoth in line. So no. I'm telling you, teams are drooling over. You look at a Green Bay, you know what another team that will drool over a guy like that? The Chargers. The Chargers could use someone like that. Like,
they wanted all day. They tried to get Dalton Schultz.
And that's like an all day. Like, they would love a guy like that in the first.
Dalton Schultz. The Cowboys love weapons at 26. Yeah. They're a tight end. The Bengals are going to be a team looking at tight ends. There's going to be a lot of tight ends. For me, the perfect draft, when I look at the second and third round, would be Laporta in round 2 and Tyler Steen in round 3. That, to me, is my number one preference. If we go the reverse of that, we take offensive line, I think it would be, for me personally, Blake Freeland in round 2, and then I would get Brenton Strange from Penn State in round 3. And I saw a lot of his name, Penn State. We all saw the videos of Mike Gesicki kind of looking googly eye over him. Brenton Strange is a guy that's another dude who's going to be a way better pro than he is going to be a collegiate player. He had the same problem Pat Freiermuth had, the same quarterback not getting him the football, like as a 6-year senior. How Penn State, a prominent program, has allowed that dude to be their starting quarterback for 3 or 4 years, to me, you can see why they haven't been able to beat, the Michigans and Ohio States of the world. But he's another guy that if you came out with one of those combinations, Reason, you're getting 2 good starters. The reason I like Laporta at 2 is because I think that guy becomes an immediate weapon, and I think Tyler Steen can come in and actually beat Austin Jackson out for the right tackle job. So you get 2 starters early. I think Brenton Strange, if you went the route where I said draft Blake Freeland, I think Freeland could start day 1. I don't think Brenton Strange in round 3 would be ready to start right away. He would need some development. So like that's where I really think, but like there is so much potential for the Dolphins, despite not having a first round pick, to walk away with such a good draft. Now, when I started to work on my 7th round mock, I can't tell you that I didn't snap a pencil between my fingers because I was so pissed that we got that first round pick taken from us, man, because if we had that pick, we could get whatever damn tight end we wanted and then go offensive line back to back in the 2nd and 3rd round. And, but
take a running back with no problem.
Right. And
Right.
so it's one of those things. But I think the good news to wrap that up is that there are so many good options in the offensive line in the second, third round. There's Oluwatituwimi, the center from Michigan, who's a stud who could be there in the round 3. I mean, you look at the draft. I mean, there's John Gaines, is a guy that's getting a lot of love from UCLA, really strong guy, plug and play at left guard. There's Jarrett Patterson, who's a guy from Notre Dame. Nick Broker from Mississippi, Emil Courier from Alabama. There are so many good guys in the interior linemen. You got from Oregon, TJ Bass and Alex Forsythe. There's so many good guys. Henry Banvalu from Washington. There's just a lot of really, really good talent on the offensive line, and that's why I don't think Miami will ignore it. I think they understand that. And if you want an offensive tackle, you got to strike on day 2, no later, because there is a huge steep drop after round 3. I literally don't even have a gradable offensive tackle besides Wanya Morris from Oklahoma. I literally have nobody else after that as a draftable tackle in my rankings.
So after the draft, we're going to be clearing up some more money, but I know something you wanted to talk about because people keep hitting you up about privately. Moves Miami could do to make some more cap space. I mean, you mentioned Crossan earlier. I know this is something you wanted to cover, you wanted to discuss. The floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, I just think we're impatient by nature to be a human, right? The reality of it is there's 6 months before that opening game. So there's still the draft. There's what day the most trades happen on? Night 1 and night 2 of the NFL draft.
And so right now we have about 3.8 million, and Van Ginkel and Justin Bethel's numbers are not against that yet.
Yeah, so we're flat. We're probably even. And that's kind of what I'm thinking. And you don't sign a Justin Bethel back. So the way I look at it for Keon Crossan, for example, you release a guy like that who played well last year. This isn't penalizing him for not playing well. But he makes $3.2 million, where if you cut him, there's no dead money. It's $3.2 million in immediate savings. Your corners are going to be Xavier Howard, right? It's going to be Jalen Ramsey. It's going to be Kader Kohu. It's going to be Nick Needham. You get Justin Bethel, who's probably a better special teams player than Keon Crossan for probably 30% of the contract that Keon Crossan has. And then you have Trill Williams coming back. And, you do have the nightmare that's been Noah Igbenogany. But you have all these bodies out there. I just don't see Keon Crossan's fit here. I'm just being frank. Then there's the trade
special teams.
Yeah, the trades. Right? Yeah. And
remember, that's why we signed him, and that was one of the bitter tensions between Crossman and Boyer. And one of the things Boyer took the fall for was because his defense got so depleted, he was taking special teams away, and that's why Crossman stayed, because remember he sold he was taking my guys, and Crossman was one of those guys, right?
Yeah, there's the trade possibilities, right? We said Cedrick Wilson, that frees you $6 million. Unfortunately, wide receivers don't have a great market in the trade market right now. DeAndre Hopkins, again, can't even fetch a 3rd-round pick right now for Arizona. That tells me that it's going to be hard to shop them. But maybe after the draft, somebody doesn't get what they need. They're looking say a team like the Chicago Bears is you know what? We still have $48 million against the cap. We could bring this guy in for $6 million. We could cut him and get out of the contract after this year, and then there's the elephant in the room, that's Emmanuel Ogbah. Now, Reason, I've digested the Emmanuel Ogbah situation, and I watched the Baltimore game closely, and he wasn't getting the sacks or the pressures, but man, that guy's stout on the defensive line. On the one play, which is when we were down by 14, and it was the 4th and 1 run, Lamar Jackson kind of shot the gap. Dude, he destroyed his man, which allowed Seiler to get free and just stop Lamar. We got the ball. We threw the 40-yard bomb or the 48-yard bomb to Tyreek, and we were right back in the game. Emmanuel Ogbah is a really good football player. He's just got a really bad contract. I'm excited to see him in our defense. I know this is his last year in Miami if they can't move him. I think if they could get draft capital for him, they probably would move him. But again, I think that's just a bad contract, so it probably won't happen. But the Wilkins extension gets you $4 or $5 million. So I think if you cut Crossan, you extend Wilkins, I mean, you're looking at being $20 million, a little bit over $20 million after June, where there are going to be veterans that are cut. You're going to be able to go get a Matt Filer for $2 or $3 million, and you plug and play a guy like that. So I think that we have to be patient, because it's so fun to see your team spend the big bucks in free agency. We know that better than any team in the world. That's not how you win, right? We did it with
you
Mike
want to be
Wallace.
smart with your money.
Yeah, it's smart. And now we get to kind of sit back, let the market come to us. Like, I think the Dolphins will add one more quality starting offense line in signing them, and I think they'll draft someone. So I think this line's going to get better. You just have to be patient, and it sucks because I want to know what this roster looks like. But I can tell you this. I look at the Dolphins roster right now, head to toe, the whole thing, when you look it over and you digest it, that is the best Miami Dolphins roster in over 20 years. I mean, from you look at that, like, I used to have a hard time convincing myself what jersey I wanted to buy next. Now I can't even tell you which guys I want to cut because I know people are going to poach off of our roster. You know what I mean? So it's exciting. So, I mean, we are officially, about a month away from the NFL draft, 4 weeks. So it's going to go fast. This, to me, look, we don't have a first round pick. It kind of takes some of that fire away, but this is my favorite month of the year.
Brother, one day I'm going to get you away from your little draft party and chicken wings, and we're going to get you up here for one of the days of the draft, and people will gobble that jazz up, man. I'm telling you right now.
I love it, man. It's great. So, but for me, the draft is won on day 2 of the NFL draft. You have to hit your first round picks.
Yeah.
You find superstars. Like, look at all these running backs, the Dalvin Cooks of the world, right? The Derrick Henrys of the world. You look at these guys.
Second, third, fourth, and fifth round are that's where that's where you usually end up finding the guys who end up making up the core of your team, like if you hit on those picks. So
right.
That's where I always say the second to fifth round is where the money's made. That's where you make your money as a GM, is when you start hitting in those rounds, is when people start looking at you like, okay, this guy, it's easy for you to, it should be easy for you to hit up in the top 20, top 25. When you start getting into the 50s, when you start getting into the 80s, when you start getting into the 120s, that's when we see what you in the scouting department are really made of.
Yeah. One thing I want to comment on is because I'm looking at in the chat, and I'm seeing no regrets getting Tyreek, but we got fleeced by Kansas City. I don't understand that, because with the pick that we lost in that, it got traded to the New England Patriots, and they drafted Cole Strange. And then
how's that working out?
Yeah, I mean, would you rather have Tyreek Hill? I mean, look, again, you said he's overpaid. He had 1,700 yards receiving. He changed our offense. We went from like 28th to 6th. I just disagree with the Tyreek Hill.
But then look what AJ Brown went for a higher pick than Tyreek. Remember?
Yeah,
didn't AJ Brown go for like the 17th or 16th pick or something like that?
Tyreek Hill's the best player we've had since Dan Marino. I mean, that's my opinion.
But you're not wrong.
I would say one scenario to watch when it comes to the draft is that we're on the clock on pick 51, and if none of the guys that we really love are there, a potential trade back later in the round 2 and picking up a 3rd round pick. I would just say keep an eye on
fourth.
That.
Or fourth,
because I think that's paramount here. Even if you might move 5 or 6 spots back and pick up an extra 4th, and still land a Sam Laporta. Like, that is one thing.
And then that 4th is now a running back you can take in the 4th because it's so deep. Right. You know what I mean? And you can add, you can take that Sam Laporta, and then the 3rd you take an offensive lineman, and now in the 4th you can go get if a linebacker slips or a running back is slipping, go make the move.
Right. Because I think that if you could walk away on day 2 with 3 quality players, Reason, that's let the board fall to you. It's going to be hard to knock it out of the park, because when you look at your draft boards and you get past player number 40 on your draft board, I mean, man, I'm just telling you, like, it doesn't get pretty, and that's where it's like, or vice versa. I'll say another thing: if there's a guy you have a conviction at, and it is pick 40, and you have to trade your 2nd and 3rd round pick, go get Jahmyr Gibbs, go get Michael Mayer. I'd rather walk away with one of those guys than 2 average to good players. Go get a great player. If Jahmyr Gibbs is there and he's fallen, and you're like, you know what, man?
Or if Darnell Washington's falling to 41, go make the move.
And then the last thing I'll say about the draft, because you agree with me on this. For some odd reason, Keely Ringo is falling. And we don't need a cornerback.
I still think he's going to be gone. There's no way he's there at 51.
But I will say this. If he's there at 51, he's my number 6 overall player in this entire draft. I move up in a second and get him, man. I can't even imagine him being there. But it's going to be fun. be patient. We're going to add players. They don't have this cap space coming up for the fun of it. We're going to add players, and this football team is going to be better. And look, they're ready to compete tomorrow.
Listen, I love you, God's child, but I gotta say Tyreek's better than Jason Taylor, my friend. I'm sorry.
Look, I love
I love JT.
Yeah,
and I love Zach Thompson. I loved Ricky, but Tyreek's that dude, man. We got the best athlete in football, man. He's ridiculous. All right. T-Soul said, did you guys mention Dawand Jones from Ohio State? Do you think he's there at 51?
I don't think he's there, but I have heard that there are some concerns with him, injuries, that he could fall out of the first round. So that to what we just said, I freaking love Dawand Jones.
So do I. He's a first round talent all day, baby.
He reminds me of Orlando Brown coming out of Oklahoma, who fell to the Baltimore Ravens in round 3, and then they become one of the best right tackles in football. And for whatever reason, he has a conviction to play left tackle, and he got $17 million a year. Dawand Jones is a guy that I am telling you 100%. He's a top 20 player to me. I would say this: you never know.
25. Yeah, I got him a top 25 player. Yeah,
you would I would say that with him, it's like, for me, I see no way that a Darnell Washington is there. I see an avenue where that a player of the caliber of Dawand Jones could fall if Matt Bergeron and Blake Freeland take these huge leaps and push him down. That could be a potential. Dawand Jones is a guy that I would have as a top 5 player on my list of people I'd want on the Miami Dolphins personally, because of the needed right tackle, because then we would never have to talk about Austin Jackson again.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have to. It'd be over.
Yeah, stud.
Dawand would end that conversation very, very quick. The first day of training camp,
it'd be over.
He's getting balled over by
rookie camp. Never mind training camp. Rookie camp, bro.
Yeah, when Cameron Good's steamrolling over Austin Jackson, and then Dawand Jones throws him 25 yards down the field, that will change very fast.
Oh my God, that's so true.
Because if he ever sees me, he'll kick the shit out of me. But
don't worry, I got your back, bro. I'll be there.
We traded Minkah Fitzpatrick for Austin Jackson, man, and we should have got Tristan Wirfs in that draft. And you and I talked about this all the time. Like, there's a lot on that pick.
One of my first ever takes on this platform, the YouTube platform, in 2019 was, we need 3 guys in that first round. We need Tua, we need Wirfs, and we need Jonathan Taylor. Imagine if we would have drafted those 3 players and built the way we've been building, what our team would look like right now.
I mean,
oh my God! Imagine if Wirfs is on that line, and then Raheem Mostert was complimenting Jonathan Taylor. Oh, bro, will we even be talking about the draft right now? It'd be like, yo, get it over with so we can go win an AFC championship. That's what we'd be saying right now, okay? Just those 2 moves, just Tristan Wirfs and Jonathan Taylor alone, and we had the opportunity to get Wirfs. We just didn't want to throw in a fodder pick. Chris Greer got cheap, and we had the opportunity to take Jonathan Taylor, but they listened to good old Brian Flores, and thank you for no egg monogamy. So,
right. Well, look, I'll be honest. That was a fireable offense. Those 2 picks. Chris Greer, right? Like, despite that Laramie Tunsil trade, him getting Tyreek, him getting Ramsey, and that 2021 draft with Holland, Phillips, and Waddle are complete 360.
Yeah.
That has saved him and obviously put him in the category as one of the better GMs in football. But off that 2020 draft alone, like, I don't care, like, because we're 2 guys and he's the franchise quarterback. But within on those 2 other picks were fireable offenses. Luckily, he wrote the ship right here, and we were able to fix it. And now this team's, loaded.
Yeah.
And then he knocked
it out of the park, that draft.
Yeah, the 2021 draft, I think, is probably the best draft since 84 when they drafted Marino. It's 83. Yeah. So I think it's one of those things that, but it all works out. But yeah, man, like, we still have 2 picks on day 2. We can still make this team better. Go get me 2 good players, man. That's all you can do.
Any final thoughts before we get out of here, bro?
Nah, man, I hate that it's so far away from September, but I love where this team's heading. I love the moves they made. I like the way they're conducting business. They're not just throwing money out. They're letting the market come to them. It's been a long time since we've seen them be able to be a kind of a shrewd business operation, but I'm happy because I've seen that work out for other teams like the Patriots, the Colts when they had Peyton Manning, the Baltimore Ravens. When you are getting Like, I think the Ravens had Justin Houston on their team last year for $4 or $5 million, and he had 10 sacks. You know, you get
high value contracts. That's what we're doing with Deshaun Elliott. That's what we're trying with David Long. We're giving out money that we think these players have a level of production in them and potential and to vastly outperform those contracts, high value contracts where you're going to get more production than what you're paying for. Chris Greer is navigating that, I think, very well. And if these guys stay healthy, you know, he's going to have high level. You got a basically a Pro Bowl, all pro talent in David Long for what, $5.5 million a year, over 2 years. Like that's you rarely ever see that, man. Like that, he needs to be given props for that. You know what I mean? Just the high value contracts. I'm surprised. Hey, you have nightmares about getting Malcolm yesterday, or what, buddy?
No, I'm gonna have nightmares of watching Anthony Mantha play on this hockey team much longer. Good Lord, what a lazy pass. But honestly, dude, for the Caps, I think they needed this teardown for a while. I want Knutsov to be traded. Apparently he's been requesting for that.
Yeah, but how weird is it going to be that one of us is potentially both of us or one of us ain't going to be in because we got the second wild card spot and you guys are just out. Both of us could potentially be out of the playoffs. How weird would that be?
Eerie, man, because it's been 15 some years like that we've had to even look at this.
Dude, the Penguins have the longest active playoff streak in professional sports right now.
Right. It's crazy to think that that's going to happen, but you know what it shows you, man? If you don't develop your players, and you just try to bolster on talent to your roster, it doesn't work. In hockey, more than any sport, and I know this in a hockey podcast, that continuity means something, right? You need the Carl Hagelins of the world on your team to supplement the Sidney Crosbys and the Alex Ovechkins. You know what I mean? You need those type of guys, man. And I like the Capitals for too long have just tried to bolster talent on their roster. They had the Hershey Bears, who were a great system for a long time. Where are any of those players? None of them are making any plays because they've gotten chased out of here.
The same way with us.
It's just a bad formula.
That's because both of our teams were in such long win now windows, bro. So that's why, like, Wilkes-Barre Scranton's the same way. The baby Penguins have just been, I mean, Dolphin fan. That's why lucky we're Caps and Penguins fans, because at least we've seen what a winning fucking window looks like over the last 10, 15 years. Jesus.
In my life, man, like, and everyone asks me, like, dude, why are you a sports fan, man? It's a brutal thing for me, man. Like, I'm an Orioles fan. You can see by the hat. In 2 or 3 years, the Orioles are going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, you guys are. Well, the Jays are. I think us and you guys are going to be battling
such young, talented teams. But my sophomore year of college, I went to Maryland. We won a national title in basketball. Man, I think I missed 2 weeks of school. I was so hungover after we won that. But between that and the Caps Cup, that's what I've won. But like I will say this, and it's not even close. As much as I love the Caps, and the Caps and Orioles are my 2A, 2B team, nothing would compare to the Dolphins winning. I would say the Dolphins beating the Ravens last year, and that comeback felt like the Stanley Cup win to me. I'm just being honest. Like, I was in the stadium and I was literally, if that video probably got to Facebook, I probably wouldn't have jobs at this point anymore. But yeah, man, fins up.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Hell of an all season, but it's far from over. Again, look, Chris Greer, he's that sneaky dude at the poker table, man. Like, he's wearing the glasses, you can't read his eyes. He's always up to something, man. And they know the window is now. They know the window is 2-3 years. They know that.
Let's get it then.
You're going all in. There's moves to be made. I think that $13.6 million reason is contingency for Dalvin Cook. That's how I'll end. I think that is a market they're going to continue to explore. I think the Vikings and Dalvin Cook are headed to a breakup, and I think Miami could be in on him. And if they wait till after the draft, they'll have more capital they can move to make it happen.
Yeah, that's what, like, I've been see, that's the thing. Everyone keeps talking about Derrick Henry or all these different names. That's the name I keep hearing that they're monitoring, that it's not over. And I've even heard as far as that Dalvin Cook is willing to play ball contractually.
Right.
So
and look, we know who trains him.
Yeah.
We know where he works out. We know where he lives. We know who's got the sunshine and no state tax. We know all this stuff. You put that.
We know where his heart's at.
And hey, is there anyone wearing number 4 on our roster? I don't think so. So bring that dude in here, and it makes a lot of sense. And then when that happens on this show, I'll call my shot that we're the best team in football.
Yeah, I mean, like, dude, because a guy like that, listen, 400 of you still in the room, smash that like button on your way out. A guy like that, you know, even with a few holes in the offense, he can supplement some of that. He can mask some of that. So
make people miss. I haven't seen that happen here in years. Make somebody miss you in the open field. Go bust the 60-yard touchdown run. Like we have, like it's part of the false offensive line, no doubt. But you know what overcomes bad offensive lines? Running backs that have vision and the ability to make people miss in the hole. Dalvin Cook has that ability. And then, man, he has a gear where all you're going to see is the Cook on the back of his jersey. And that guy in this offense with the lanes that will be open with what we have on the outside, Dalvin Cook is a game changer. You know, I don't think this is going to die, this story, because there was legitimate. This isn't guessing. The Miami Dolphins were legitimately interested. Barry Jackson confirmed that they were interested and told, nah, not right now. Well, when that kind of stuff happens, Dalvin Cook either wants a contract or he wants to be on the move.
And the way they structured their running back room tells you they've put it in place where they can move off any single player in that room and not really take a hit, and they'll be fine. Like the way they've structured that room screams, yeah, none of these guys are the long-term solution, and we're either going to find it in the draft or we're going to find it with Dalvin Cook.
Right.
That's literally what it's screaming to you right now, that we're going to find it via draft, trade, or free agency next year. And I'm telling you right now, they're gonna, if they become sellers, the Dolphins will be at the front of the line, and the other team that will be at the front of the line too. I think the Bills will try, but I think that could be a thing where the player might force his way to Miami, not Buffalo, because A, who the hell wants to go to Buffalo? B, Dalvin Cook, sure, you want to play with your brother, but do you want to take reps away from your brother? That's going to be another thing where Dalvin's probably going to say, send me to Miami. That's where my heart is. And hey, where do you play his college ball? Someone remind me. All right. So, you know,
he's got a new defensive back that, you know, he probably can help convince him to come here.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. And it'll be really interesting to see on the third round of the draft that the Vikings take a running back, right? Like that will be a very telling story.
And they re-signed, they give Madison money, right?
So like always pay attention to those stories,
yeah.
Because the one thing is I have learned in the last 2 years, and I would never say that. I'm a loyal guy. I'm a Ovechkin, Cal Ripken, Dan Marino, my favorite players, one team, one jersey kind of guys, right? Today's world's so much different. Never say never. Ed Reed was a Texan. Peyton Manning was a Bronco. Tom Brady was a Buccaneer. Like, it's a different world. Players move. It's all about the logo on the hat, not the name on the back of the jersey. So I've learned not to say never. But, fins up, man.
All right, guys.
Next week.
We're going to get out of here. We'll be back next week, probably at the same time on Thursday. Until then, guys, you already know what time it is. Fins up all day, every day. We'll see you on the next one. Have a fantastic Sunday.